Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hello and welcome. Another episode of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. A little special epi as we're doing something we've done in the past, but several years have passed since we last did them. So we're revisiting our top 5 of each position all time. Not just last year, not the upcoming year, not a preview of all time, which means, of course, there's a lot of criteria. But I'm still, number one for criteria for me is longevity when you're looking at all-time lists.
Absolutely. We're not looking for anything as far as a flash in the pan. There has to be continued levels of success from these players to get on an all-time top 5, top 10, whatever you want to put together type of list. Having that continued success, longevity in your career, as you said, absolutely plays a major factor in how we are grading these players. But of course, the very minimum to get on these type of lists is you have to wow, you have to be fantastic. And we have got a selection of AD carries that absolutely delivered on that part in their career, no doubt.
And usually we just do top 5 for these kind of lists, but there were so many guys who couldn't quite crack the top 10. We had to do, call it honorable mentions, call it whatever you want, but we're doing 10 to 6 first. And these guys are all iconic in their own right and have at times been the best in their region, and some of them even the best in the world. As you like at 10 to 6, Wei Xiao is the guy you have to give the acknowledgement as kind of the godfather of AD carries. And anytime we do these lists, it's always so hard to rank the early day players versus when the game fully evolved and expanded to be even more competitive.
It's a completely different video game at that point when you're having to go that far back and compare them. But Wei Xiao is absolutely one of the pillars that you look back in this game of pro players that were stars, that were superstars at that level. He was that for World Elite, and what he did in the early days of the LPL, the way that he was able to dominate his opponents, the damage that could come through, the aggression that we saw. These are all things that were pretty much brand new at that point in time in the game, in the competitive scene. To see someone play on that edge, to have that type of confidence, Wei Xiao is absolutely a trailblazer in the League of Legends scene.
The Uzi, before Uzi was actually even playing professionally, that's
the reason why you had players like Uzi come up and everyone else after that. Wei Xiao is a big inspiration for them.
Ahead of him, we've got Imp and Doublelift, and I know people are always a little triggered when you ever see Doublelift on lists like this. Top 10, of course, he deserves to be on here, and the reason he's ahead of somebody like Imp is, okay, 2014, you can talk about Imp as the best AD carry probably in the world, but when we're talking longevity, even on LGD, you started to see that fall off. Doublelift was the best AD carry in North America for almost a decade.
Imp absolutely deserves his due and deserve, honorable mention in this type of slot, 10 to 6 for the ADC's best of all time. But to have anybody that would say anything against Doublelift to me in this position is just completely missing the point or undervaluing any type of domestic success, only looking at the peak, the pinnacle success at Worlds, international success, and that's a huge part and extremely valuable, absolutely. But it's not the be-all and end-all. It's not the only thing that you have to be looking at with these players. You're talking about 8, count them up on both hands. You can't do it on just one. 8 LCS titles for Doublelift. 6 straight Worlds appearances. Yeah, you can meme and laugh, save and flash, all those type of things you want about those Worlds appearances, but getting 6 in a row absolutely does deserve its mention and its credit for what it means and how successful and continually successful Doublelift has been throughout his career.
And despite his real lone international success coming at the hands or taking down Jackie Love, the guy a spot ahead of him who has a shorter career so far than a lot of these guys on the list, but because he's already got a world title, because of how his first split and run with top eSports was, yes, he has some borderline it moments, but you still got to acknowledge Jackie Love. And then finally, bang, just outside of the top 5. He's the one on this list that you could argue cracking that top 5 because a couple world championships is pretty good.
He's got the stats, he's got the trophies, and he's got the gameplay to back up any type of argument that anyone wants to bring to the table about having Bang be into that top 5. That's the one that really does, as you said, stick out when you're looking at all these honorable mentions. Everyone, and I think ourselves as we've talked, there are reasons you can look at these players and go, fantastic, amazing, all these type of things. but I want to exclude them from that top 5 all time. Bang is someone that absolutely, you're looking at the accolades, the trophies, everything that he accomplished in his career, and it's almost impossible to not include him in that top 5. But that's just because of how good we think these top 5 are. That someone like Bang, with the trophies that he's got, can find himself on the outside looking in.
And to be honest, the post-SKT era is another one of the reasons Bang isn't in this top 5, because 100 Thieves, A Freak of Freaks, that was not even close to the same level that we saw from him on SKT.
Let's not even put the 100 Thieves tenure in there with the same
Throw in Evil Geniuses.
Oh, no, please, let's forget about that.
Yes.
LCS time.
Bang retired when he left SKT. That's how we'll remember things. Now we crack into that top 5, and yes, this is the spot you could maybe argue Bang sliding into, but you gotta put some respect on the greatest Western AD carry we've ever had. You throw Reckless in there, you're talking about a 4 times MVP, 9 times he's been on an all-pro team, and you want international success. He's been to the World Finals. He's only missed out on top 8 at Worlds once in 6 appearances at Worlds.
Like everything that we have said talking about Doublelift, that international, the domestic success, that we want to be talking about, that he has achieved all the way through and then some throughout the various, LEC and everything else. But what we are and why he finds himself in that top 5 is that international success, that extra level that someone like Doublelift was not able to achieve, and Reckless has been able to achieve and maintain multiple times. I think one of my favorite ones to look back on is when you think of how badly things went in that first week back at the 2017 World Championship, and that miracle run to get through and punch their way in to that knockout round. Absolutely Reckless, a major part of that story.
And, accolades throughout those World Championships. He's beaten a top-seeded EDG in a best-of-5. He's gone toe-to-toe with top eSports in a 5-game set, eliminated RNG and Uzi for the first time ever in the group stage. So there's countless series you can look at that individually and as a team that Reckless was part of were absolutely outstanding.
And on every team, anytime they have success, Reckless has to be a big part of it. That is just the way it has gone with the rosters that he has been on, and how involved and how focused his success is for the team to have it in any type of taste. And you better believe, looking at those records, there has been some successes for Fnatic, for the teams that Reckless has spent his time on and throughout his career.
And I know people always meme on him for being a KDA player, but the fact that for a guy who's played 7-8 years to have a career KDA of almost 6.5 is absolutely disgusting.
You don't get that just by being the KDA player, right? The one that we're joking, we're laughing about not making... Oh, he's protecting his KDA, all these he's not going to leave the fountain, everything else like that. You don't get a KDA like that, as you mentioned, without performing, without taking those risks when it is necessary. Reckless absolutely, when you look back in history, has done that.
That's good for a single split. If someone has that KDA in a single split, you're like, oh yeah, they had a pretty good season. To have that for a career is just absolutely insane. Only one of the reasons why he deserves being in that top 5 AD carries of all time. Onwards we move to number 4 on this list, and I'll tell you the spoilers right now, guys. That's it for the Western AD carries. It's Reckless and Doublelift, and that's pretty much all we're talking about. And number 4, we got World Champions coming through, and this is the MVP from 2017. Ruler, he's been around long enough now, 2016. We're half a decade plus that we've been seeing him on the Rift, and I don't know if there has been a more consistent AD carry than him.
Ever since he's appeared in the scene, there absolutely has not been a better ADC than Ruler. The consistency, as you mentioned, and that top level, elite level of performance that is being delivered consistently from someone like Ruler. He is absolutely one to look at on this list, and to recognize that this is not the be-all, end-all. He's not going to end his career, spotting in at the 4th all-time. He has the potential. He's got the skill. He's got the time in his favor to continue to climb up this list, to provide more reasons why he should be not just number 4, he should be a number 3, number 2, possibly even a number 1 when all is said and done about Ruler. He has that level of skill, that level of talent. It's just picking up the awards, the accomplishments along the way. And as we can talk about, he's already on his way. He's got that already started out, as you mentioned, with that early 2017 World Championship.
And yes, the big glaring thing missing from his resume is actually an LCK title, which seems crazy for a guy like Ruler who's accomplished so much. He's never actually won an LCK title, but we know the specialty of Gen G and Samsung. 4 times he's won that regional gauntlet.
He's gone through, they've made sure that we're not the champions of the LCK, but we're damn sure we are going to the World Championship. That has been the story of Gen G during Ruler's time. And you're right. That is one of the things that you look back on, and you will say that if you want to be considered the greatest of all time, it may be a little different than other players we'll get to talk about. It's the other hand of winning domestically that we need to see from Ruler to be considered that greatest of all time. And it's crazy to think that he's accomplished everything else that you want to see, and we're just waiting on that type of thing for him.
And the biggest, glaring, ugly spot or thing you can criticize about him is, of course, everyone with that Gen G roster in 2018 that went 1-5 and failed to get out of groups. But if you're looking back at that roster and pointing to the problems, Ruler is probably the 5th or 6th thing you're talking about on that roster.
The reason why that roster failed out at the World Championship in Korea, not Ruler. I can tell you that. And there's no way you're examining those performances and you're looking at Ruler as the guy for that one. You're right that is a very big disappointment, not only for Ruler, for Gen G and their organizational history. But we're talking about Ruler as one of the greatest of all time. And there is no denying that when you're a rookie player and you make the courageous play that you do on Tristana to secure that kill on Faker to get the World Championship for your team, that's how you're starting it out. Everything else is going to be gravy.
And we've seen, 2019 even with Gen G they were not that good a team, but there were moments against Griffin, I'm thinking of particular. There were some Tristana games where you saw it was the Ruler show. Even on a subpar, barely even playoff squad, he still found ways to shine. And that just truly speaks to, again, how consistent he is and how much of a star player he is.
I think back to it was, early days of the Damwon dynasty, and they're playing, and all these teams, they're undefeated. Ruler's the one. As you said, those poor performing years on Gen G overall as a team. Not Ruler. There's no poor performance coming out from Ruler. My man has been steady since appearing in the scene, has won championships since appearing in the scene. The sky is the limit for someone like Ruler.
Yeah, there's no reason he can't be climbing higher up on this all-time list to number 3, where, one of his former competitors, rivals, I don't know if they were quite rivals, it was maybe missed that window a little bit, but we're talking about Prey. If Wei Xiao is the LPL godfather of AD carries, then that's exactly what Prey is for the LCK and Korean players, because since Season 2, we were talking about him as one of the best AD carries, not just in Korea, but worldwide. And obviously there's tons of crazy numbers for this guy. He's won 4 LCK titles with 3 different teams. The only player to accomplish that feat.
Oh, Prey. Thank goodness we get to talk about him finally. This has been one of the retirements in the last couple of years that has stung just a little bit more than the extra ones because of how good of a player Prey has been, how dominant he was during the very best of times, and what he did manage to accomplish even without a championship at the international level. What he did internationally, you can't stop talking about the amazing plays, the memorable ones that he made, and of course, no play more memorable than the Ashe arrow, of course.
And obviously, yes, doesn't have a world championship, but you can go back to every single Worlds event that he's been to. Season 2, 4, 6, 5. He's only lost to the eventual champions. Every single world championship he's gone to, that's been the team that has eliminated him, and it's always been in the knockout round.
And you go back and you look at how he played and how dominant and aggressive that he was in lane, but it's that calculated aggression is the way that I want to classify for some Prey and what he would do. There has been no other Prey. There have been fantastic other ADCs to come through the LCK, but nobody had that special combination of what Prey was able to bring to a team and where the game was at that time and how it allowed for the innovation as far as how he would play and the risks that he would take, betting on himself with his outplay mechanics and skills. That's what we could see from someone like Prey, and it really was a treat to get to watch.
And when you become such a high level and such an icon, especially with a specific champion, you mentioned the Ashe arrow, 58-20, a 74% win rate on that Ashe pick throughout his career.
That is some insanity right there, and especially when you consider how pivotal, and consistently throughout the meta or throughout the years appearing in the meta, a champion like Ashe was during his career, to be utilized to that level, to have, as you said, over a 70% win rate with the champ, speaks to the level of skill that Prey was bringing out onto the Rift.
And of course, he did basically retired twice and came back to varying degrees of success. The whole Longzhu era was after he had retired, but there were different stints, even 7 years into his career. I think of that MSI with Kingzone. If Uzi didn't have such an insane tournament, we'd be talking about Prey having one of the all-time best performances for an AD carry at that event. So even at the near end of his career, he was still putting out absolutely world-class performance after world-class performance. Now we're into the top 2, and as you go through the rankings for pretty much every role, a lot of them, you feel like the top 2 are locked in, and it's no different with AD carries.
I will not accept any other 2. We're pretty lenient on how you want to be throughout the rest of this list. We think that the top 5 is pretty well defined, but if you want to, you want to throw Bang in there, you want to have these conversations, you want to have a talk about where, 10-6 were, absolutely. That's more than okay. That's a fun time. Debating about these 2, I will not accept. These are the lock-ins for who are the greatest ADCs of all time.
And when you talk about longevity having a key impact for these international success, domestic success, you don't have to look any further than Deft in at number 2. By far, to me, the craziest stat of his career is 6 times he's been to the World Championship. 5 different teams he's done it on. Nobody is even close to touching that record.
That is an unbelievable record and accreditation to what type of success that someone like Deft can bring to an organization just based off his pure raw skill set is what you're seeing with that type of stat. And everything else throughout this man's career, you can look back at various kind of eras in League of Legends, and you still see that continued success, continued domination, greatest of all time level of play coming across from someone like Deft. Let's start back in the early days. Let's go back to the EDG era, the great Korean exodus, and where, you really did get to see for the first time the superstar level that someone like Deft could bring to a team.
And that was when you started seeing the Jinx pick come out, and obviously 58-20 is pretty good on Ashe for Prey. 42-4 on Jinx is still one of the most unmatchable win-loss records that anyone could get on a champion.
It's crazy to think back on it. It's one of those champions, and it's one of the combinations that in the last year or two, anytime Jinx has been remotely close to the meta, every single game that Deft played was must watch, just simply because you needed to be there and pick and ban if he chose Jinx, and the levels of excitement that you could have for the following game never disappointed on that champion, that unique pick for him. He has been one of the most fun characters, not only off and on the Rift, but the way that he has performed, one of the most fun players to cheer for throughout his career. That is Deft, one of the greatest of all time.
And you've only heard positive and sweeping praise from teammates that have been with him throughout his entire career. Go back to Samsung Blue, EDG, KT Roaster, DRX, Hanwha Life, it doesn't matter. Everyone has always spoken highly of him, and the fact that he was able to perform at such a high level in 2 different regions, 1,000 kills in the LPL and the LCK, and winning titles in both different leagues, again, speaks to how under any meta, any organization, any teammate, this guy has thrived throughout his entire career, and that's why he's coming in at number 2 on this list. But number 2 isn't quite enough to be number 1. I tease this like it's a surprise who the number 1 is going to be, but unless Deft plays for 3-4 more years, I don't see how anyone can ever usurp the throne of AD carry god that Uzi is currently sitting on.
It's just so wild to think that we can love and appreciate a player like Deft so much and then realize that the distance between him and the player at number 1 is, a Grand Canyon sized gap between these players. And even a world championship win late in their career for someone like Deft, I don't know if that's going to top what Uzi has put together, this mountain that the god himself, Uzi, has accumulated throughout his career. Accolades, success, stats, all of it, all in his favor. My man, Uzi is undoubtedly the king of AD carries.
And even though, again, you can look at no world championship, that doesn't mean he hasn't performed on the international stage. You've absolutely lost your mind if you're going to be saying that, because from his debuts at Worlds, going to back-to-back finals with entirely different rosters, 4 different players around him in back-to-back years to get to the finals is an incredible feat in itself. You have the almost golden year run of 2018 where he finally captured a couple LPL titles and that MSI win before getting upset by G2. But just all you have to do is look at peers and other professional AD carries around the world and ask them about Uzi, and they'll go off for 10 minutes talking about how insane it was to match up against this guy.
Yeah, you don't need to listen to a scrub like myself tell you how good Uzi is when you, as you said, you have every single pro, anybody that's gone up against him, they just leave bewildered by how amazing, how skilled, how talented this individual can be. Keyboard and mouse, video game. My man, it is a special combination what Uzi is able to do out there on the Rift, having been able to watch him for so long. And as you mentioned, that 2018, I think a lot of people need to realize when you, as you said, no world championship doesn't mean his performances weren't there, because you can go back all the years before 2018. But to me, the best example is, as you said, 2018, the golden year, all these success, every single thing, domestically, MSI, all the titles in RNG and Uzi's hands for that year, how good they had been. And it took a team making a whole strategy to take you out of the game as the only focus. That was all they were planning on. That was the only way to beat that RNG that year. The only ones able to camp Uzi out, putting the wards on the lanterns, making sure Uzi's not getting out and everything. But my man, there is just nothing left to say about how incredible Uzi has been throughout his career, and really what a treat it was to get to witness that career.
My favorite clip is Doublelift talking about, and he references Core JJ and Ruler. Ruler, a guy who's on this list. He said, basically, we did nothing wrong in lane. I made no mistakes in lane, and we were down 20 CS. That's just Uzi.
Yeah, it really is remarkable. And one of the first moments that I think I remember, going back obviously throughout the history of League of Legends, but you look at that bottom lane, what he did alongside Ming on RNG towards the later part, it just truly was at another operating level than anybody else in the scene, in the game at the time. Go across every other region, nobody was delivering on the dominance the way that Uzi was able to, and nobody has since been able to dominate and deliver at that high enough level.
2018 MSI, and I'll even throw in the 2 LPL splits, is the most dominant run. Not even an AD carry. I'm throwing Faker's hat into the ring here. The most dominant stretch of an individual player that we have probably seen for that extended a period, and that's why he is numero uno on this list. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.